Welcome to the Elvis Tiki Garage Shop. I recently purchased a new metal lathe and thought I would throw together a quick video on aligning the tailstock, as this is part of the normal setup when setting up a new lathe. So hang around and I'll show you a couple methods of aligning the tailstock. Okay, before we begin aligning the tailstock on the metal lathe, we first need to understand some parts of the tailstock and how they work and function. On most tailstocks, there are these indexing screws here, as you see on both sides. That is for your adjustments left to right. You would want to use 2 Allen wrenches, 2 slotted screws, or 2 wrenches, depending upon the style of tailstock that you have. In order to set the tailstock height, you would need to shim along the underside of the tailstock, either front to back, which would get you your tilt and nod of the tailstock if it was out of alignment. Also on all tailstocks on the back here, I'll zoom in, so hopefully you can get a better picture here, you will see indexing marks right here. Those are simply a guideline or a starting point for aligning the tailstock. Okay, moving on to part 2. I've placed a paper towel on the ways in hopes of this showing up better on the camera, as it's hard to see without the white background. So step 2, after lining up the indexing or witness marks on the back of the tailstock, the next step that I use is to place either remove the chuck or place some sort of tooling with a centering point on it in the lathe chuck, or you can remove the chuck and replace Morris taper into the headstock of the lathe. In the tailstock, in my case, my tailstock is a Morris taper 2. I place a dead center in there. From there, I simply advance the tailstock, as you see it coming in on the camera, until it just touches the center point of the center of the headstock. Now, for most machining jobs that are not critical or have super tight tolerances, this is adequate. However, the third step will show you how to bring the headstock into true alignment. Okay, step 3. What I've done here is I've placed a precision ground alignment bar in the lathe chuck and mounted it on a dead center in the tailstock. I've also set up a magnetic dial indicator, and I will set it to 0, taking up a little of the backlash of the carriage, and I will move it. I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can watch the dial indicator. Let me adjust the camera. Adjust it up just a little bit here. Okay, the indicator's zeroed out, and this is about a 12-inch bar, so for most practical purpose, this is sufficient. You'll want to check this both on the horizontal of the bar and of the vertical, or at the 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock position, and that should be sufficient. So moving the carriage the length of the alignment bar, you can follow the dial indicator. You see it's barely moving there, but it is starting to drift off there. There's 1/1000ths, 2/1000ths. And as you see there, in a distance of about 12 inches, that tailstock is about 5/1000ths of an inch out of alignment. So what we need to do is we need to move the tailstock towards the front of the lathe. And we do that by adjusting those indexing screws on the front, or excuse me, on the side, on both sides of the tailstock. You loosen and tighten them until you get the indicator to run at 0 or as close to 0 all the way down the length of the bar. I'll make some adjustments off camera and we'll be right back. Okay, after going the wrong way with the first adjustment, I've made a third and a fourth adjustment off camera. Again, a tip is to have either 2 Allen wrenches or 2 wrenches or 2 screwdrivers, depending upon the style that you have, and you loosen and tighten simultaneously both on the front and back adjustment screws. So now I've done that. I've tightened everything down. I've locked the tailstock back in place. I've put the test bar in place, and I've zeroed out the indicator. So let's have a run at it and see where we're at now. As I move the compound towards the chuck, which is about 14 inches, you'll notice that the dial indicator is just barely moving. And in fact, when I get up near the chuck, it's about a half a thou off. I'll zoom in just a little bit right there. There you can see it. Just under 1,000. So we're going to call that good enough for the job that I'm going to be doing next. So we will call this tailstock in alignment. Again, this is within a half a thou in 14 inches of travel. So for turning a bushing that is maybe 2-3 inches long, this thing will be spot on.